Terminal 3 at Jakarta's International Airport is out of sight and out of bounds for ordinary passengers. For this is a terminal catering to one of Indonesia's largest export industries, women. Indonesia may be a newcomer to the international maid trade, but it now ships tens of thousands of workers overseas each year. Each woman departing with the same aim, to escape a life of poverty. The island state of Singapore is the destination of many Indonesian maids, close to home, but also a world apart. Wealthy Singapore employs 140,000 migrant domestic workers.
If you do anything wrong, please tell your employer, okay? Report to your employer and say sorry, mom, sorry. And then no talk back and give the black face to your employer. Or don't put in
The reality of working in Singapore is laid out to these maids in waiting from day one. As soon as they arrive, they go straight to the employment agency that has arranged their journey.
And then no boyfriend. This one is very important. Okay? You already signed the condition, the work permit condition. You cannot have any boyfriend, pregnant or married in Singapore. Okay? Tidak bisa cari pacar.
The Singapore government sets down rules. The agencies, such as this one, AdvanceLink, reinforces them.
And one of the rules here in Singapore is the maids, they are not able to get into a relationship with a man or anybody else. They're not supposed to get married here. They're not supposed to get pregnant here. So these are the things that we brief them on.
A few more home truths about Singaporean values surface during this introductory class.
See, this guy, ugly or not? Bodoh tak? Not handsome, right? Nah. You want this kind of husband or boyfriend or not? Very dark and dirty, work in the construction site. Is it? Agree, right? Please. And then
This maid agency surprisingly agreed to allow Dateline to film its operation. It has earned a reputation of supplying well-trained and compliant workers.
Okay. Work in Singapore. Did you have any attitude problem?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Cannot have any attitude problem. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then another thing is employer house.
When the domestic maids arrive here in Singapore, what we teach them is the working conditions here, what to expect from the employer, and the do's and the don'ts.
And for the young women in this class, it is a seemingly never-ending list.
Okay. I need you to tell me 5 examples from the condition.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Okay.
Good afternoon, friend.
Okay.
The 5, no, you cannot use telephone.
Okay.
And food, appearance, do not transfer, contract, penalty.
Okay. Okay.
From the moment a maid signs up, she goes into debt. She doesn't get paid for at least the first 4 months. She's a bonded servant, paying back her airfare and other fees.
Okay. Don't repeat to others.
At agencies like this one, a woman's country of origin determines her starting salary. The average wage is about $250 a month. Indonesians are rated near the bottom of the pile.
The least paid are the Indians. They are getting about 200, and then next followed by the Sri Lankans. They are getting about 220 to 240, and next will be the Indonesian maids, and then next comes the Thai, the Filipinos. They are about the same, about 300 plus.
Other conditions are less certain. There's no guarantee of a room or even a bed.
Sometimes the maid may have to sleep in the kitchen or underneath the table even. We have got customers that come in and tell us, oh, I don't really have a place for the maid to sleep. Is it okay for her to sleep in the kitchen? Is it all right for her to sleep underneath the, the desk or,
Have you ever said no, that the circumstances aren't good enough?
Not really.
This maid, who we will call Caroline, as she doesn't want her real name used, has worked in Singapore for more than 4 years. It took 2 years before her former employer gave her a day off.
We need the day off or relax the mind for the hard work every day, but they didn't give. Even I asked also, they said cannot.
Why not? What was
Because
the reason?
Because you Indonesian, he said. Because you Indonesian. If you Philippine, I think you can. What is different Indonesian and Philippine? We also human. They got brain, we also got brain. They can think, we also can think. How come they put the difference between the Indonesian and Philippine?
I just can't imagine what it'd be like to not have a day off in 2 years.
Crazy. Work and work. Face the same thing. No rest.
Caroline's case is by no means an exception. For Indonesian workers, it is the norm.
I think it's countrywide. There's no off days.
So
Right.
for Indonesians, no off
No,
days?
no off days. For Filipinos, some agencies they practice like off days after 6 monthly, and employers will have to give 1 off days. So it depends on the employer.
Who makes that decision? I mean, no off days. It seems a little bit harsh.
Right. Okay, because these days here, we actually do love to give the maids off days, but sometimes they make things worse. If the off days is given, then the phone calls start to come in. You know, it makes us a little bit more difficult to control them.
Employment agencies maintain women sign up freely to these conditions. But there are few options for those who arrive in Singapore already in debt. In a work contract obtained by Dateline, the agency lays down a long list of rules. Indonesian maids are trapped. If you are feeling stressed or have trouble with the employer and his family, please seek permission from your employer to call us for assistance. You are not allowed to request for a change of employer. This agency also lays down the rules for maids wishing to practice their religion. Advance Link tells employees, you are not allowed to go to church, temple, mosque, etc. You are not here for a vacation, but to work. Most employers dislike their domestic helpers to pray while working in the house.
We just admit what we can do. We only ask whether answer yes or no. It's okay. We take it.
These young women learning the ropes of domestic service are yet to discover what few rights they'll have in Singapore. And the same goes for support services. There are none. Even international agencies, like the International Labour Organisation, the ILO, that should champion the rights of these women, have little to say.
I think that there are a range of reasons why these sort of contracts might exist. And one might be the absence of effective representative groups that will do advocacy work on behalf of migrant workers.
Maids in trouble can turn to one person. Caroline, who we met before, is considered a bit of a veteran after 4 years in service.
Then which one you want? You want go off day, but your salary is I think around 260.
Caroline's now found herself a good employer, but she's often overwhelmed by their pleas for help.
Yes, I think have a bit of the a good luck than them.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I feel now. Because sometimes I know they got complaint like this. Sometimes the employer going to rap them or molest them. That's why just I don't know how to help them because they far from me. They just give them the advice. Okay, you keep still until we can find the way how to help you.
Majikan saya sudah sering kali pukul-pukul saya, tapi saya tetap bersabar di situ.
One maid with a desperate story to tell is Sukatini.
Tapi hari itu seharian mukul terus di badan saya. Jadi saya tak tahan karena tak tahan dengan pukulannya, jadi saya terpaksa lari dari rumah itu.
She fled her employer's apartment in this building just days before this interview.
Kamu ke kantor polisi, kamu jalannya di mana?
Saya lari dari rumah majikan saya mau ke polisi. Saya dari jalan dari lift sini kan, Saya langsung jalan dari sana.
We met Sukatini through Haslina Hallian, one of the very few Singaporeans to take an active interest in the plight of maids.
A lot of times they're not allowed to leave the house or use the phone, so and they don't even know any kind of numbers to call for help. So I guess they're just stranded.
For 5 months, Sukatini wasn't allowed outside on her own. She suffered in silence as her employer beat her and starved her.
Sambil cubit tangan saya yang sini gitu, ditarik sampai ke kamar dia. Habis itu tanya, kamu mau kerja baik-baik tak? Saya bilang, iya mem. Habis itu mem pukul saya lagi yang sini. Setelah itu saya nangis kan, saya bilang sama mem, oke lah mem, kalau tak suka sama saya, kalau mem tak mau sama saya, lebih baik saya pulang ke agensi saja. Dan majikan saya bilang, kalau kamu mau balik ke agensi, kamu mesti bayar saya dulu. Terus mem bilang, terus saya bilang, saya tak bisa mem. Oh, kalau kamu tak bisa, ya kamu tak boleh pulang, kamu mesti finishin kontrak dulu selama 2 tahun.
Sukatini is being put up temporarily at the maid agency's hostel. She's made friends here with another Indonesian woman, another runaway maid, Ratna. Ratna was so viciously beaten by her employer, a 36-year-old businesswoman, she ended up in hospital.
Akhirnya ini sampai bengkak, ini hitam begitu, tak tahu sakit sekali rasanya. Ini saya nunduk begini, belakang saya juga ditampar-tampar terus begitu. Karena dia saking kuatnya. Nah, selama saya dipukuli itu saya tak pernah melawan sama sekali.
It was only after she could no longer tolerate the beatings that Ratna fled. Her case is now before the court.
Akhirnya saya lari pun saya tak tahu kemana polisi, karena saya di sini juga takut ya, baru pertama kali. Akhirnya saya diantar oleh sopir taksi, terus saya melapor ke situ. Akhirnya dari polisi berikan keterangan, di foto, semua foto identitas saya ada di polisi. Polisi bawa saya ke rumah sakit. Saya tinggal di Alexandra Hospital 5 hari. Nah, dari situ saya terus diambil oleh agensi.
For some Indonesian women in Singapore, the story is even grimmer. Statistics reveal that more than 1 Indonesian maid a month has fallen to her death in often mysterious circumstances. The Singapore government claims all but 1 were accidents. But this document, prepared by the Indonesian Embassy in Singapore, suggests otherwise. 43 women suffered fatal falls from high-rise apartment blocks in 2.5 years. 12 cases are listed as suicide. Indonesia says it's concerned, but won't comment publicly.
There are possibilities that there are mates in these units here that are suffering from different types of abuse. Mental abuse, physical abuse, but it is hard for the next door neighbor to know, because most of the time these mates just suffer in silence. They wouldn't scream, they wouldn't retaliate, because they know themselves, you know. To them, they look at themselves as just maids.
It was in an apartment block like this that Haslina met a young Indonesian woman who later jumped to her death from a 10th floor window.
I think if there's somewhere she could turn to as a listening ear, maybe it might prevent this incident from happening.
It's okay. A little bit salty. Sure. You taste? No.
The only employer we could find who would speak with us on camera is Caroline's current boss. They think they're lucky to have found each other. But even a kind employer considers maid abuse such a sensitive topic for Singaporeans, she's asked us not to reveal her name.
Yes, there are people who abuse their maids. Why? I don't know. All right. Okay. Maybe they think of they are very high up on the status. Okay. Or they view their maids as a person who is lower in status. Okay. And I feel that this is wrong. And I think that this is wrong. Mm-hmm.
So if you saw someone who was mistreating a maid, would you say something to them?
Yes, of course.
Have you ever said anything to anyone?
Yes, of course.
What?
Okay, no names given. All right. A child could take a cane and hit the maid. All right. And I know this child. Okay, I disciplined the child on the spot.
So the child would actually feel that it was okay to hit the woman who was working in his house as a
I think perhaps the child doesn't know. All right, the child is only 6. All right, and I think that perhaps that he has observed his parents, okay, how they treat their maids. All right, and they don't treat her with respect. So the child would be probably thinking, okay, all right, if my parents don't treat this woman with respect, why should I?
Government policy also encourages maid abuse. Before these maids in training can be placed by their agency, employers must post a $5,000 bond.
Okay, let's say if she runs away, okay, and we can't find her after 1 month, we lose it.
Is that perhaps why you have these examples of employers locking their maids in the house? They are simply worried.
Yes.
Employers stand to lose their bond not only if a maid runs away, but if they breach the government's edict against getting pregnant or daring to marry a Singaporean. Despite numerous attempts to speak to various ministers, this appears to be one issue that the government would rather not discuss. Perhaps it's due to conflict of interest, for the government profits from each maid brought into the country. In fact, the government earns more in taxes each month for each maid hired than the women doing the work take home themselves. For this little city state, it's a tax that generates $580 million a year. But it's not only the government that's been distressingly mute on the ill treatment of domestic workers. Even one of Singapore's few voices of dissent, Dr. Chee Soon Juan, is hardly brimming with outrage. One of the maid agencies we went to puts out its own handbook in which it lays out the various wages applied to people from different nationalities, the different traits of different nationalities. Shouldn't Singapore be embarrassed by this?
I think it's something that we really need to take note of, and I really would like to see us making a greater effort in making sure that things like that don't happen. It does, and we're trying. By we I mean the opposition. We're just trying to create that kind of space whereby we can even begin to talk about such issues. We're fighting with our lives, just trying to make sure that things like that are brought up.
Singapore has profited greatly from the cheap labour of women like Sukatini and Ratna. They came here hoping to escape a lifetime of poverty, but they've become trapped in the economics of misery.
Saya pengen cepat-cepat pulang ke Indonesia karena saya di sini sangat sedih, tak ada orang yang dapat membantu saya. Sehingga saya sudah lama rindu, kangen sama keluarga, tak bisa bertemu orang tua juga.
For abuse maids, escaping their employer is not the end. Getting home can be an even bigger nightmare. Ratna's employer has been found guilty but is appealing the 6-month sentence. As a result, Ratna has spent the past year waiting, unable to work, unable to go home. Her agency has given her a roof over her head and feeds her, but at a price. Until Ratna's violent employer pays up, she's going nowhere.
Kira saya boleh pulang setelah majikan saya masuk penjara. Saya perkirakan Desember, November, saya sudah tutup. Ya. Sidang pertama majikan datang, langsung dia mengakui semua kesalahan-kesalahan dia. Terus dilanjutkan sidang kedua, tapi majikan dengan alasan katanya operasi tidak datang. Langsung case ditutup begitu saja, saya tak tahu itu. Tapi saya sudah boleh pulang, tapi kenyataannya saya masih tinggal di agensi. Agensi tak mau rugi.
Sukatini is in a similar position.
So mamanya saya mau pulang ke Indonesia, tapi saya tak punya uang dan selain itu saya masih punya utang sama agensi, jadi saya tak bisa pulang.
For now, they remain trapped with no indication of when they'll be able to return home.